Welcome to Guns, Guns, Gear, and Guns with Gary Gunderson. I am Gary Gunderson. The House Judiciary Committee held a hearing on ATF Overreach with Director Dettelbach. There was a lot of discussion about a recent no-knock ATF raid in Arkansas that led to the death of the suspect.
Over 1 hour before sunup, 10 carloads of ATF agents and Little Rock Police Department officers came to the Malinowski home to execute their search warrant. Not an arrest warrant, search warrant.
I tell you what it appears to me is what I've seen from the federal government, whether it's ATF or the FBI, and having agents come out looking like they're ninja turtles for combat.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Facing these questions, Dettelbach, as usual, was useless.
And longstanding policy of the Department of Justice in both types of administration, on both sides, has been we do not comment on pending investigations.
Right. Does the ATF use RF frequency jamming technology to prevent the internet and cell phones from working during the execution of a search warrant?
Again, I am not going to sit here, and I guess I maybe should have said this before, and comment on the tactics that we use when we go into dangerous places, because it provides a blueprint for criminals to hurt us.
Let's get this straight then. You told us you won't answer anything specifically about a case. Now you're saying you're not going to tell us generically.
We could tell, maybe we could.
In this case, there were many, many, many. And because they thought there were 150 weapons in the house, certainly security and protection for the officers would be a prime consideration.
It's not like he could have carried 150 weapons by himself, or did you think he was going to stage them all at the ready after announcing themselves as police? As they said, it was a search warrant, not even an arrest warrant. Dettelbach repeated an often reported talking point, which was skillfully countered by Representative Massey.
In fact, the leading cause of death for American children is gun violence. Not cars, not cancer, guns.
Can you tell me the fact that you were expressing or claimed that there are more that firearms are leading cause of death for children? What were your specific words in your testimony?
I'd have to look at my testimony.
Can you look at it?
I think it's children and youth, and it's in my longer statement that's in the record. I don't have it in front of me.
Can you define a child and youth?
There's child and youth. There's a statistical study that is the source of that, and we can get that to you. I don't know the specific site sitting here. We'll be glad to get that to you.
Yeah, the statistical study, according to news reports and Snopes, as Mr. Nails referred to, excludes infants under the age of 1 and includes 18 and 19-year-olds. Is that true?
I don't know. I mean, honestly.
You don't know your own statistic?
No, I don't know. Honestly,
why would that be your
killing of children
Congress?
Unacceptable?
Any killing of any person is unacceptable, except in self-defense. Are you including if a 17 or 18 or 19-year-old gang member came to a person's door and tried to attack them, that was self-defense? Are you including that in your statistic?
Congressman, firearms violence is a huge...
Yeah. No, I'm not going to let you make your public service statement. I want you to defend your sworn testimony. Are you claiming that 18 and 19-year-olds are children in your statistic?
And again, you have my statement.
Yeah, I have it. I'm asking you to explain it. Here's my other question. How many 18-year-olds who've committed a gun crime have you suggested be prosecuted as a minor?
We investigate crimes shoulder to shoulder with local law enforcement.
Are 18-year-olds children or are they adults?
Each state has its own
Under the
rules
gun laws.
as to when juveniles are prosecuted.
Federal gun
laws, as you may know, federal laws with respect to the prosecution of juveniles are exceedingly difficult. And you are correct that prosecution of juveniles, if you're implying this as adults, is rare in the federal system.
Here's the reality.
And juvenile crime,
reclaiming my time.
crime is an increasing problem.
Laws that jump from California.
Reclaiming my time, Look, you're including in your statistic, whether you know it or not, 18 and 19-year-olds, but you would never claim that those are minors in the context of gun prosecutions. And the only way you can get the number of deaths attributable to firearms above other causes is by excluding under the age of 1 and including 18 and 19-year-olds, particularly gang members, and including self-defense.
Dettelbach doesn't get it. Massey is asking how many adults, 18 and 19-year-olds, he recommends be charged as juveniles, since they're apparently children in his eyes. But he can't wrap his mind around that and is going on about charging juveniles as adults.
We had another debate a few minutes ago about whether firearms are the leading cause of death for children, and the issue, I guess, was, do you count infants or 18 or 19-year-olds or whatever? I just want to reiterate, because that's not the first time we've done that one, and my view then and now is that I think it's a ridiculous point to focus on from the standpoint of whether it's first or second is a leading cause of death. Isn't that enough?
Look, obviously, children dying is bad. The point is, the gun control advocates purposefully lie about it to make a point, using a definition of children here that is not used in any other context ever. If you said one of the leading causes of death, fine. You are purposefully changing the definition so you can say it's the number one killer. So my question back is, why is that so important to you?
Unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from April 2022 entitled Firearms Were the Leading Cause of Death in Children in 2020. Researchers say also a second one will be unanimous consent to enter into the record an article from October titled Firearms Now Number One Cause of Death for U.S. Children While Drug Poisoning Enters Top 5.
Well, the very first article clearly states ages 1 to 19, so including adults and excluding infants, as already mentioned. And the second one does not specifically say it, and I'm not paying $35 to read the article, but it does say for children and teenagers, which means they are literally anyone with an age in the teens. So again, adults that are 18 and 19. Good way to prove your point.
These fully functioning, untraceable firearms can be bought without a background check. They can be ordered online and in less than an hour become a firearm as deadly as any sold by a gun dealer.
That's clearly false. You may disagree with the amount of work required to make it functional, but if it was fully functional, you wouldn't need to work on it at all.
So, am I correct that ghost guns look like regular guns and shoot like regular guns and kill like regular guns?
Well, if you don't know that, why are you even talking about these?
Under the Gun Control Act, Congress specifically provided that items that were readily convertible to being operable firearms should be treated as firearms. The market was out there producing items that were readily convertible, and they were being sold without background checks. I did myself. I took one of these kits and put the gun together. My spouse will tell you not that handy around the house, but it was very easy for me to make a firearm, take it to the range, and fire it. Congress anticipated that problem. The market changed, and we issued a rule to make sure that Congress's statute was appropriately enforced.
And we appreciate that, given the constant innovation that we see from gun manufacturers and those who seek to evade the existing laws. If we were to wait for Congress to catch up all the time, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
The ATF had long said they did not endorse 80% lowers or frames, but they were not ruled to be illegal for years. Suddenly, they changed their mind once an administration pushed for it. If it was so dire, Congress had plenty of time in the intervening years to pass a law that would have the same effects as this rule. The fact that they did not, and the ATF then made the rule anyways, demonstrates that it was political and not something Congress desperately wanted to implement.
Director Dettelbach, thank you for being here. I want to thank you, and I believe about 5,000 of your members, full-time employees at ATF.
people, those 5,000 plus people who work at ATF are incredible people. They are doing a mammoth job with very few resources.
And you had a budget last year of $1.672 billion with a B. And you're telling me, I'm sorry, folks, I can't provide this transparency to the American people. I can't because I don't have the budget to do so.
Few resources? That's like $325,000 per employee.
Do you believe that the American people have a constitutional right, an individual right, to keep and bear arms?
The Supreme Court has made it clear, and yes, the Second Amendment has been interpreted numerous times by the Supreme Court, just as you, there's more to it, but yes, what you have said, yes.
Okay, and so but you believe that. You interpret the Constitution that way.
I interpret all the laws the way that the Supreme Court says they're to be interpreted.
Call me old-fashioned, but I think you should believe the Bill of Rights applies regardless of what the Supreme Court says. They are rights enumerated that predate government and are meant to restrict government. Dettelbach clearly would have no objection enforcing tyranny if a court said the Second or First Amendment did not exist.
If I want to sell a gun that I currently own to a friend in Texas, do I need a license?
So getting into the specifics of the rule, which is in litigation. So first of all,
this ought to be a really simple question.
I understand. So you look at the totality of the circumstances. If we're talking about an isolated sale from somebody who is not engaged in the business of dealing firearms, you don't need a license.
All right. So if I a citizen, this country, I live in Texas, I have a weapon and I want to sell it to a fellow Texan. On an isolated basis, do I need a license?
Again, if you are not engaged in the business of selling firearms, those are Congress's words.
If I post a sale for a firearm last year, okay, and I do that on some relevant website like TexasGunTrader.com, and I sell that weapon, and then I inherit a gun from my dad, and then less than a year later, I have another weapon that I inherit or I've got, and I decide I don't need anymore, and I sell it. Is that engaging in the business? Is that engaging in activity that means I need a license?
I think pursuant to the clear language of Congress in doing this and to the things we've said in the rule, we specifically mentioned inheritance.
Just saying, if I have about 50, let's assume I had 15 or 20 weapons and I wanted to sell 3 over the course of a year.
I think
I'd like to make money on
my
them.
reaction to what you're saying is that you look at it's very clear that you look at the totality of the circumstances. We can go through an endless series of hypotheticals. Hypotheticals aren't the way we address cases.
You understand, and I realize I'm over my time. Do you understand why the average citizen sitting out there saying I've got 400 pages of rulemaking might not understand what they are allowed to do under the law when the director of the ATF can't look at a member of Congress and tell me yes or no emphatically whether or not if I sell a weapon or 2 weapons or 3 weapons or 5, whether or not I need a license? Do you think that's the way the law ought to be or the rules?
Respectfully, I believe that the rule that we have promulgated provides way more information and clarity than
400 pages
than just the 1 or 2 sentences that Congress provided. And we were seeing
you
massive
can't even answer it. How can the average American know it?
One major cause of migration into the United States is instability and violence in parts of Central America, which is partly fueled by the flow of firearms from the United States into Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean. But my Republican colleagues have refused to support common sense gun safety legislation that would fight the flow of American guns across the southern border and help address the root causes of migration.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
That we have a fairly simple mandate from the American people, which is to do all we can to stop gun violence.
No. Not everything. Not at the expense of rights. Not at the expense of the Constitution. Not at the expense of your tyranny. There is no unlimited mandate for government to do everything on any point.
So taking on the gun violence epidemic requires asking hard questions about enforcement. That's why the last time you were before this committee, I asked you about the Good Old Boys Roundup In the 1980s and 1990s, ATF agents organized shameful whites-only events, which former ATF Director John McGaugh characterized as being racist in nature, anti-Black, and having discrimination almost every year. It may seem like old history, but there are legitimate and recent concerns about racial bias in the agency's enforcement operations, specifically in its use of sting operations.
Well, I didn't have a Democrat calling the ATF racist on my bingo card for this hearing, but there we are.
I want to turn to the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. I'm so proud that we were finally able to do something, some small things around gun violence.
Whenever a gun tragedy occurs in this country, we always hear the left say, we have to do something. We have to do more. And then once legislation is passed, my colleagues on the left then say, we have to always do more and more and more and more. I'm going to warn the American people that we have to do more. What we have to do more really, really means. First, they come after AR-15s. Then they come after your sporting rifles. Then they come after your long guns. And then when homicides have not decreased because you take away all of those weapons, and keep in mind the AR-15 is responsible for 6% of homicides in this country, they're going to come after your handguns and disarm our country and disarm our rights and take away our Second Amendment rights that have been given to us by our founding fathers.
This is outrageous and absurd. They're clearly coming for your handguns before long guns. Come on! But what do you think? What was your favorite exchange in this hearing? Let me know in the comments below. That's all for today. If you have made it to the end of the video, please consider supporting me on Patreon, subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and sharing it with others to help the channel grow. Thanks for watching.